Kia ora and kia orana to you all. I'm not sure whether I really should need to introduce Caren. It's surprising the number of people who've come up and said hello to her already today. But let me say first of all that I was fortunate to meet Caren when I was on the board of the Cook Islands Business and Professional Women's Association in Rarotonga. And she was a great sounding board for me when we were encountering a few interesting issues, shall I say, in the governance area. Caren is a proud Cook Islander. She's based in Napier with her family, and she was actually in Rarotonga on the occasion that I'm talking about for a meeting of the Cook Islands Investment Corporation, of which she is a director. A great many of you will have visited the Cook Islands, I'm sure. Hands up who's been to the Cook Islands? Look at that. I knew there would be just about the whole of the meeting. So you'll recognise the sort of challenges faced by, with a small population, large number of tourists, and that's a big issue for the Investment Corporation, which manages Crown assets in the Cook Islands, including buildings, land, power, airport, seaports and so forth. So that you can situate part of Caren's concerns in that context. But of course, as many of you have acknowledged, that's not by any means her only focus. She's a chartered accountant with a Bachelor of Business Studies and has had a range of governance roles over the past 14 years, which I'm actually going to leave it to her to give you more detail about. I'll just mention that she is Deputy Chair of Creative New Zealand, member of the Charities Registration Board, and in 2016 her service was recognised with the awarding of a New Zealander of the Year Local Hero Award. So over to Caren, please welcome her.
Thank you, Christine. And I was just mulling over the fact that there are probably at least 3 voices I could bring to our conversation today. And the first would go something like this. G'day mate, I'm a one-eyed Cantabrian accountant, and I'm about to say, I was going to say a former auditor, but for the auditors in the room, of which there are many of us, once an auditor, always an auditor, so I've never quite given that away. And so it's lovely to see Marion Cowden and Alan Frost. Marion's actually responsible for my entering the auditing profession when she suggested, when I was about 16, that instead of going off to be a professional dancer, which is what I wanted to do, that perhaps I might consider taking up a scholarship. No, my parents have been in her ear, so it's fine. I might take up a scholarship with the Audit Office, and that began a career for me, a very interesting career, which ended in the Office of the Auditor General in 1999, and along the way I got to work with Alan, so it's lovely to see you again, and Reece Barlow as well. So that's one voice I could bring today. The second voice would be the voice of a suburban housewife, mother of a 16-year-old teenage boy and a 10-year-old going on 25-year-old girl, partner to Mackenzie, who's the best freezing worker in New Zealand, and a very proud Hawke's Bayite living in Tamatea, Napier. The third voice would be one that would be in a totally different language, and that would be the voice and language of the Cook Islands, where both my parents hail from. My father's from the island of Rarotonga, which I just saw that many of you would have visited, and my mother's from the very remote island of Manihiki in the northern group, where the Black Pearls come from. And that voice would say, kia orana tātou katoto, I te ira mānia tikai, I te oere ko Wellington. So it's lovely to be here with you today, and I said last week to one of my board colleagues, and so this is the first board I'm going to talk about, because actually 2/3 of one of the boards that I'm on is sitting in this room, and that's the Charities Registration Board. Myself and my chairman Roger Holmes Miller sitting to my right, so I won't be making any jokes about that board. I said to Roger, actually I don't know anybody else who's a member of Rotary Wellington, but I was quite wrong, so it's lovely to see some old friends. I'm very happy to be here today to just share with you just my thoughts on bringing a different voice to the board table. And because I'm an absolute firm believer that every board and good boards have got diverse views, thoughts, backgrounds, and people that can just lend different ingredients to really great decisions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the boards that I'm on at the moment and what drove me there and my voice. So I'm just talking about what shaped my voice over the years, now that it's 50 years old, where I choose to speak that voice and how I make my voice heard, given that in many of the board situations I'm in, my view is quite often a unique one. And I'm interested in just some thoughts from you on who or what has shaped your voices over time, because I can see the huge experience in this room of speakers, board members, and of course club members. So that rather messy looking picture up there is my life currently, is the boards that I'm currently involved in. So I'm at the moment associated with 10 boards, 9 here in New Zealand and 1 in the Cook Islands. I'm fortunate to be the Deputy Chair of Creative New Zealand, which keeps me fairly busy. Of course, sitting alongside Roger on the Charities Registration Board, and we're a board of 3, lean and, well, not mean, but yeah, smaller than some of the others. Some people this week might say we're mean. I've just coming off the board of New Zealand On Air, the Broadcasting Commission, after a very interesting 6 years. I haven't quite left because they've roped me into being the independent chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, which seems, again, for the auditors in the room, you'll know, is an occupational hazard for any boards. I'm currently Deputy Chair also for the Eastern and Central Community Trust in Napier, which is the biggest philanthropic funder in our area, the Tairawhiti, Manawatu, Horowhenua, and the Wairarapa. And there's a few other small boards on there, but some might say that's quite a busy picture. Well, 14 or so years ago I looked around and decided that if I wanted to have any influence in life, then being in places where decisions get made is really important. And more so, when I looked around, I didn't see any other Cook Islands woman, and at that time younger woman. I can't pull that card out now that I'm 50, so Cook Islands woman, sitting particularly in boards where associated with government, where they were making decisions about New Zealand. And I wanted to make a contribution in that area. So that's a bit of context to what I'm going to talk with you about just for the next 10 minutes or so. And the first thing is I wanted to talk about what has shaped my voice on the board, because as a child I was fairly shy, and shyness is not a very useful attribute, particularly on the boards that I'm on, not our one, Roger, the other ones. And so I guess the first thing that helped shape my voice is to do with a family. So I'm the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter for 6 generations back, for which the males in our family would just say makes me incredibly bossy, like my mother and my grandmother, and that would be true. But because of that position in the family, there are certain expectations on me culturally that I will have a voice and that I will exercise that voice on behalf of my family and my community. And I've got expectations there in kind of inverted commas, because while there are those expectations, it's fair to say that earlier on in life, as the daughter of a migrant, there weren't a lot of expectations actually from the rest of the community that I might do well. And that was a huge motivator for me, that I would do well and I would make my contribution to New Zealand in the same way that my parents have, and in fact one of the reasons why they came here from the Cook Islands. So that's 4 generations of the stroppy woman in our family, and I do think that probably the shorter one there is the stroppiest of them all, but some might say well trained. So I feel really thankful to still have my 92-year-old grandmother and my 74, oh don't tell her I told you her age, my mother, still here to be providing guidance, sometimes of the growling kind, still at the age of 50, but guidance certainly around the requirements and expectations of our quite big family. So that's been one shaper of my voice. The second thing, and you would have heard Christine say, because I think I write it in capital letters on my CV or bio notes when I go to speak, that if you remember nothing at all, it would be that I'm extremely proud of being a Cook Islander. After all, there's only about 80,000 of us in the world, so we're quite a rare breed. But I am proud. I'm proud of being from a little country that punches well above its weight, and proud to be part of quite a sizable community here in New Zealand, where we have 60,000 Cook Islanders living here as opposed to the 10,000 that live back at home in the Cooks. So I'm very proud to be one of that team, and I guess it's fair to say that my work on boards has been shaped very much by my views and by the things that are important to my community. The third shaper has been one of technical confidence, because all those boards I'm sitting on at the moment have mainly been because somebody said, we really need an accountant. And while I wouldn't say I was the best accountant in the world, I know that having that accounting experience, and in particular auditing experience, has stood me in great stead in all of the, I've lost count now, but probably around 20 boards that I've sat in over 18 or so years. And so I was really thrilled last year to be recognised by my professional group, the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, with a fellowship, which means practically that after my name, rather than CA, I can have FCA. And according to my children, I really would have got successful if I could add a K in front of the FC. And by then, Mum really would have made it. So thrilled to get that, but also thrilled to be recognised for my contribution to governance with that rather interesting looking sparkly gold round thing, which is a New Zealander of the Year Local Heroes Award, which I hadn't heard of, but I was again really pleased that governance is being recognised as something that's really important in this country, and I'm really pleased to be a practitioner in that field. So having that kind of validation again gives me some confidence for the voice that I bring to the board tables, and it's been important to me over time to keep up that professional confidence. I guess the next thing that shapes my voice is just the chance to influence influences, and I must say not all of them are political, though those are the only photos that I could find for today. But I felt it was really important, and my parents had drummed into me that one of the reasons they came to New Zealand, both of them at a young age, is because in return for the education that they were able to get here and the employment opportunities, they felt it was important to make a contribution, and that's certainly been drummed into us, and part of that is influencing people who have an influence. And so taking up positions in boards has enabled me to be able to do that, to get in front of a few people. Quite a few people have asked me about that photo with John Key, whether I'm giving him advice around what he's pouring on top of his sushi. It was a far more serious conversation than that. But I've been really fortunate in the board positions I've been in to have the chance to have conversations and hope that I might have some influence on things that affect wider New Zealand. I guess one of the hugest shapers of my voice is family and community. And in the boards I sit on at the moment, while I might be there for my technical ability as an accountant and auditor, I'm really clear too that I'm there to represent the voice of the average person, the average family, quite often the people who are being served by the boards that I'm on. It's also a good grounding mechanism for me, because long after I leave the hallowed halls of those boards, those are the people who will be reminding me that I still have a tea towel with my name on it in the kitchen, and I still have jobs and responsibilities. And for me, that's been hugely important and a great touchstone for the decision making that I make at board tables to say, are these things that are relevant to the average person? Does this make sense? One of the challenges I've had over the years is learning to value the different voices, so the voices that are different to mine at the board tables that I'm on, which is most of the time. And I've quite often learned that through quite adverse situations when I'm having a barney with somebody, when I can't quite understand their view and they clearly can't understand mine. But it's been one of the best shapers of my role as a professional governor to be able to understand different perspectives and put some value to that in the decisions that we've made. And I in a board, and I won't name the board, but a board that I recently finished on, I had a colleague who, right from day go, him and I butted heads over what seemed like everything actually, because we just had totally different viewpoints. And one night we decided to do the Kiwi thing, sit down and have a beer together, because clearly it was getting painful for the both of us and neither of us were enjoying our governance experience. And in the half an hour I spent with him having a beer, I got to learn so much more about him as a person and therefore understand what was driving his particular views. Which is not to say that I agreed with all of them, but I had a far better understanding of why he was making the decisions that he made, and hopefully vice versa. And one of the things I've learned to love about being on boards is the chance to interact with different people that I might not normally have a chance to connect with. I guess one of the responsibilities that I find being a professional governor and board member is the importance of identifying other great voices on boards and supporting people into board roles. So far I've got a 100% record, that's 2 out of 2. People that I've identified as being potentially great board members and have mentored and supported them onto board roles where they've been really great participants. I think too as a parent about the responsibility of supporting younger people, and I was really interested to hear the discussion about scope and the importance, I think, of encouraging younger people to consider roles on boards. And I really wish that they talked about it at schools as being a possibility that when you're older you will have a chance to make great decisions and be influential. But I've decided I'm going to work on my own. The 2 potential board directors that live in my house, who've certainly already learnt the art of negotiation and far better than their mother. So my 2 children who, again, are not incredibly confident, but are quite happy to share their voices when they've got views. The 3 of us recently shared a keynote speech at an education conference, which was about quality education, your view. And as I was busy writing my notes, the 2 of them said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to speak at a conference to give a view about quality education." So they spent the next 10 minutes giving me their views as a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old at the time. And I thought, oh, this could work out quite well. I said, well, I'll do you a deal. The presentation is for 50 minutes. I will give you 5 minutes each, to which the 10-year-old immediately said, "Can I do PowerPoint slides?" I said, "You can do one each, but the deal is that if you say you're going to do it, you can't back down. You need to give a clear message, and it needs to be something that you really believe in." So they squirreled away with their 1 PowerPoint slide each, and the next day we fronted up to an education conference of about 250 teachers. And I have to say I was quite happy to be sort of 3rd in the ranking of the billing after these 2, because they were very confident about sharing the views that they knew as a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. They knew what quality education was to them. It was about the relationship with their teachers. It was about teachers recognising what they were really good at and the things that they weren't good at and giving them a go. And so I'm looking for other opportunities to help them share their voices and their views, because both of them, it was a huge confidence boost that actually people would be interested in what they thought, and would be prepared to listen to their view. When we finished and came down, their father, who was sitting in the back row, and very rarely is he in the back row at any of my speeches, he said to the kids, "I was very proud of you both, you did so well, and your mother wasn't too bad either." And then he sort of muttered, "And I can't believe that people pay you to do that." To which 4 ears sort of pricked up and said, "You get paid?" And the 10-year-old, who is a maths is sort of the joy in her life, very quickly calculated what the minute rate would be and quickly wrote me a little invoice equivalent on a serviette to say, "This is what you owe my brother and I." So, however, again, I think regardless of the age, regardless of the experience, I think one of the things you can do if you've got a voice and a chance to speak is to give other people a chance to speak as well. And they're not doing too bad. So I just wanted to pause for a minute so you can have a break from my voice. And I'm just interested in you giving some thought to what or who has shaped your voice. No doubt a number of you sit on boards or are involved in organisations such as Rotary, or have been in situations where you've had to exercise your voice loudly or quietly. So I'm really interested in just have a 30-second chat to the person next to you around who or what has shaped your voice. Go. Okay, so I know 30 seconds never is long enough. So could I just, I was dying to hit that bell, but I thought you probably need to be the president to do that, so I left it alone. Can I just hear a couple? So probably just from the second table down here. Who's influenced your voice?
Well, I had a gentleman that came into telecom from the US at one stage, and he was very good technically and very good from a business point of view, and was able to lead from the top in a very positive way.
Excellent, thank you. Down the back corner.
My grandfather was too, I see, in Wellington, and he died the year that I was 9. And it must have been that year in my little country high school. I must have made a mistake of saying to him, "Oh, they're having class elections to be, class leader or something." And he said, "Well, are you standing?" And I said, "No, I'm too shy." And he said, "Well, do you think you'd do a good job?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, you should stand." And I was too frightened not to.
Thank you, and I can, it reminds me of the number of times people end up in decision-making positions because either they were had their arm twisted or made the mistake of going to the loo at the time that they were choosing people and came back and found that they had a job. But yeah, absolutely, and sometimes you just need that extra little push. How about just at Kerry's table?
I spoke briefly on, I've lived a lot of different places. I grew up in Virginia, moved to California, lived in Chicago, and now here, and I've noticed that I've adapted or changed my voice to kind of meet the culture and the people that I'm working with in each of those different places.
That's great, thank you. So different influences, different shapers, but all important, I guess, at the times when you are in the situation that, in particular, where you need to be prepared to be the lone voice. So in this picture, this is in the Solomon Islands on the beach of Honiara Bay in 2012. What you can't see in that picture is that out either side is a whole fleet of voyaging waka. There's 7 of them that have been voyaging around the Pacific for nearly just on 2 years at that stage, and they just arrived in time for the Festival of Pacific Arts. And on the beach were roughly 40,000 people getting ready to welcome the respective wakas from their countries, of which there were 2 from New Zealand and wakas from Tahiti, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, and of course the one I was looking for, the one from the Cook Islands, which is the one you can just see to the front there. I'd gone down I was there in my capacity as a Creative New Zealand board member, and gone down with the New Zealand delegation, very excited about having the opportunity to welcome such a prestigious group of ocean-going vessels. And in particular the Cook Islands one, and thinking, well, if I'm really lucky, I might be able to get a slip into the back row of the welcoming group for the Cook Islanders and be part of that group. Well, not only did I get a position in the back row, but I also got the front row, the middle, because I realised down there that there was actually no official welcoming group for the Cook Islands, and they were the only country that didn't have a group to welcome them. So to my right was the New Zealand delegation of roughly about 100 doing a huge haka, and just to my left was the Samoan delegation welcoming those. And I felt very sorry for my fellow countrymen that they'd come all this way and had nobody to welcome them. And as I was standing there thinking, well, this is no good, you know, what can I do? I could hear my mother's voice saying, well, what are you going to do about it? And thinking, okay, if I'm going to welcome them by myself, I'll need to first of all head into the water, because they were quite a way out. And the particular stretch of water is full of sea snakes, of which I'm petrified of. So, but I thought then about how terrible they would feel, about how the fact that nobody was there welcoming them. And I guess that was enough of a driver for me to be the lone voice to welcome them. So I did wade out to almost up to my waist and called just about every traditional chant that I could think of and string them all together. And fortunately, and it must have been the way the wind was blowing, they were able to hear and acknowledge, because they'd just been about to leave. And so they replied with the traditional chant that you would do in reply. And I backed back out of the water, not looking down, of course, in case I saw any of those sea snakes. But as petrified as I was, being hugely pleased that I'd been able to acknowledge my countrymen in this way. And I guess for me, it's not too different to being on boards, where quite often you do have to be prepared to be the lone voice. At the same time, I'm very lucky to have fabulous colleagues such as Roger, and I've enjoyed the governance experience hugely. So look, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about me and my journey today, and Merry Christmas to you all, and go well with the business of Rotary Wellington. Thank you.
Members, I know that we're running a little bit tight on time, but I think you've all had a fantastic sense of a most distinctive voice speaking to us today and sharing some of the things that should encourage us in our own voices on behalf of Rotary when we go out to assist on the intellectual side, which we pride ourselves in so much, to assist other organisations. I think it raises some challenges for us about our emphasis on diversity, the messages that we can take, the connections that we have with our youthful groups, and just take away something for us to reflect on about what drives us individually. So please join me in thanking Caren for sharing so much today.